Chapter 14: The Law of Choice and Accountability. We are solely responsible for the results in our lives. Regardless of outside influences or circumstances, we can always choose what we think and what we do, and we are accountable for the results that we create because of it. While we cannot always control what happens to us, we can choose how we perceive it and how we respond. The more accountability we take for our reality, the greater power we have to change it. Our perception of reality is a choice, not a condition. Our experience in life is our creation, whether we realize it or not. If we want something to change in our lives, we have to take accountability for it instead of blaming other people or circumstances. This law gets us out of victim mode, where we're stuck and powerless. We are held hostage by negativity. We whine that life won't cooperate with our idea of fairness. We are in a constant argument with reality, believing that things should be different than they are. We are creating life every moment. Life isn't happening to us. We are responsible for our life. We are the authors of our story. We can author our story either consciously or unconsciously. Unconscious creation, allowing our subconscious negative beliefs to determine our results, leads to mediocrity and misery. Conscious creation, on the other hand, leads to a fulfilling life. Conscious creators create their world just the way they want it to be. And until we accept that we are responsible for everything we create, we will lack the power to create our ideal life. The law doesn't mean that we have the power to choose everything that happens to us. In fact, most of what happens to us is completely out of our control. We can't control the weather, the economy, or natural disasters. We can't control whether or not other people drink and drive and crash into us on the freeway. We can't control whether or not we get a terminal disease. This law isn't about transcending reality. It's about accepting reality as it is and choosing our response to reality. We can choose to be angry by events, circumstances, and the choices of other people, or we can choose to see the gift in them and learn from them. We have the undeniable power to choose to interpret events and circumstances with empowerment rather than victimhood. Victimhood is a choice, not a condition. Victimhood limits our conscious creation and gives our power away. If we've been wronged by another person, no matter how severe the offense, and if we hold tightly to the hurt and offense, we've ironically given our power to that individual. Fear is also a choice, not an inevitable condition. Yes, fear comes naturally to human beings, but that doesn't mean we have to be enslaved by it. We make decisions based on our perceptions. And if our perceptions are flawed and disempowering, how can we ever make wise decisions that lead to true success, wealth, and security? And how can we ever refine our perceptions if we never analyze them consciously? As Viktor Frankl so poignantly taught in A Man's Search for Meaning, there is a space between stimulus and response. We don't have to be captive to automated responses. Unconscious people waste their lives whining that their failures are not their fault. They'd rather absolve themselves of guilt and live a life of mediocrity than take responsibility and live a life of greatness. But to be a conscious creator means to live and choose from that space between stimulus and response, between events and reaction. How the law of choice and accountability and belief breakthrough work together. There's a common tendency to blame other people or circumstances for the limiting beliefs we've accepted. I can't trust men because of how my father treated me. I'll never be healthy because my mother got me addicted to sugar and processed foods. I can't make more money because of what I was taught by my parents. But until we accept that we have created our beliefs based on our interpretations of events, we will never have the willingness or ability to change them. Changing any belief is predicated upon the fact that we are the creators of our beliefs. What people have done to us is their responsibility. The beliefs we've created about what they did to us is ours. We can't change something for which we don't take ownership and accountability. Taking accountability for our beliefs is the first step to changing them. If we haven't yet taken accountability for our beliefs, doing belief breakthrough is one of the best ways to do so. Implicit in belief breakthrough is the assumption that we are the creators of our beliefs. Otherwise, we would have no power to change them. Case study: Michelle gets released from prison. Michelle is a member of our Limitless tribe with a heart-wrenching and amazing story. This is her experience with the law of choice and accountability in her own words. In 2006, I was 23 years old. I was married with 2 sons, 22-month-old James and 6-month-old Hunter. Up until that point, I had done everything right. Life had been easy and happy. I believed that because of how good I had lived, I deserved certain blessings. In my mind, life should work out according to my blissful expectations. All that was shattered when my oldest son James fell out of a second-story window and was gravely injured. After he fell, it took him about 5 hours to die. In that time, I pleaded with God for a miracle. In fact, I felt entitled to one because of my good life. But it didn't happen. I was beyond devastated. When he died, I died with him, and my bed was my casket. I fell into a deep, dark depression and spent the next 5 years mostly in bed with my covers over my head. I hid from the world. I was racked with anger, resentment, bitterness, and hatred toward God, myself, and everyone who couldn't take the pain away. I felt like I was in an emotional prison. I was like a black hole, a vacuum for light. No light could escape because I was so inward focused. After 5 years of that, I couldn't take any more. I wanted to commit suicide. I told God I was done. More precisely, I told him that I was either done or I needed to learn how to live again. A glimmer of light peeked through my darkness. I would visualize a ladder and climbing one step at a time out of that black hole. I made a promise to God, myself, and the world that I was going to figure out how to be happy again, and I wouldn't stop until it happened, and I wouldn't settle for anything less than complete joy. The first thing I tried was to have fun every day, but after 2 weeks of that, I realized I could be completely miserable while having fun. It didn't provide true joy, and it wasn't sustainable. Then, God taught me that to be happy, I must find a way to make somebody else happy. I was praying for a release from my prison one day, and God said, "Go find somebody to serve." I walked out of my bedroom and into my living room. I looked out the window and saw that my neighbors had tall weeds in their front lawn. So I grabbed my lawnmower and pushed it over to their house. They looked at me like I was nuts, and I said, "Please just let me mow your lawn." I did it, and to this day, they don't know how much I needed that opportunity. I also created a little pass-along card that said, "You've been a victim of a random act of kindness. Pass it on." I would use it in really simple ways. I'd buy people ice cream cones at McDonald's and give them a card, or pay for someone's dessert at a restaurant and have the waiter give them the card. The second principle I learned was gratitude. It sounds cliché, but my goal became to find something to be grateful for every day. I started a gratitude journal and would write down everything. I realized I needed to train my brain to think and feel a different way. It wasn't something that was going to just magically happen. I needed to be the one to choose something different and to implement new actions. Another thing I did was to look at myself in the mirror every time I started crying. I would smile and make funny faces at myself until it made me laugh. I still do it to this day because it's so therapeutic for me. Everything was going great. I wasn't 100%, but I had improved dramatically. Then I was hired to be a destination wedding photographer in Yorkshire in London. I was so excited. I felt like God had been slamming doors for me for so long, and finally one had been opened for me. I made my preparations and flew across the ocean. When I arrived in the UK, an agent asked for my paperwork. I gave him what I had, and he said it wasn't right, and that they would need to detain me and ask me some questions. I was detained for 7 hours at the airport. They took my picture and fingerprints. They finally came back and said they had determined that I was not an authentic visitor and they were sending me back to the US. Yet another door being slammed in my face, I thought. They told me they were going to take me to a facility. I was thinking it would be a lousy hotel, but when a prison vehicle showed up, I realized I would be held in a jail. They escorted me to a cell with bars on the windows and a small cot, and the door slammed shut. I was left alone. I broke down. I told God, I'm done. I refuse to find the silver lining in this. When is it my turn to get a silver platter? But I also said something else. If you need me to stop learning, I will. That simple thought broke down all my defenses. In that moment, I chose to put my life into God's hands and said, whatever you need me to learn and do, I will choose it. I will submit to whatever you need me to go through. It created such a freedom to realize that I'm not in control of my life, but I can trust in God and trust that He knows what's best for me. I had fought against every source of opposition I had experienced, and in submission, I found freedom from bondage. As I submitted, I felt God say to me, now I can work with you. I realized that even though I was literally locked up, I had all the freedom in the world to learn from the experience and choose how I was going to react. My jail experience was the greatest silver lining of all. I tell people now that adversity is God's university. Our tribulations are just our education, and our trials are just our tests. God is our mentor. My son died from an accident, but it was not an accident that he died. I did receive a miracle, but it wasn't for him to live, but for me to live through his death. Take action and apply the law of choice and accountability. Ground and ask this question. What are the top 5 things in my life for which I have not taken responsibility? Write down your answers. After you make the list, correct your past choices and beliefs and shift into alignment by taking appropriate action. Here are some selected quotes on the topic discussed in this chapter. Men are often capable of greater things than they perform. They are sent into the world with bills of credit and seldom draw to their full extent. Sir Hugh Walpole. If you haven't the strength to impose your own terms upon life, you must accept the terms it offers you. T.S. Eliot. I am not afraid of storms, for I am learning how to sail my ship. Louisa May Alcott. We are all faced with a series of great opportunities brilliantly disguised as impossible situations. Charles R. Swindoll.